Lando Norris denies Lewis Hamilton a piece of F1 history by claiming pole position for the Hungarian Grand Prix. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding and I am alone. For the first time since I've joined this company, since the start of the 2024 season, I'm not joined by lead editor Ian Parks. He is taking a few more days to recover from open heart surgery, and Sam, who obviously I've been joined by quite a few times this year, is enjoying a couple of days off. So as a result, it is me on my lonesome. But please do let me know in the comments section if you enjoy the kind of video like this of me being on my own, talking in this case all things qualifying. So please do bear with me. Because as you can see behind me, actually, it's now nighttime. I am, for those who missed me talking in the podcast earlier this week, in Tokyo for this weekend's Formula E Tokyo E-Prix doubleheader. We've had rain, we've had shine, but it's actually two night races, so I've not long been back, but I did get to see what was a really good qualifying. Let's get straight onto it, because obviously this is the last Grand Prix before the F1 summer break, and it's one that's going to really, you feel, set the mood for who's going to have momentum going into the summer, and it is the reigning world champion Lando Norris who claimed pole. A really good display. McLaren, I think, looking the best they have since maybe Miami, if we go back to the beginning of May. Lando topped third practice. It was the Ferraris who were quickest on Friday and entered Saturday really expected to be the team to beat, both in qualifying, and I think is still expected to be the team to beat on Sunday for the race. But Lando topped FP3 and was seen as the only driver who could really take the fight to Lewis Hamilton, to Charles Leclerc, and to his credit, did exactly that. Not only took the fight to them, went and beat them, claiming pole ahead of Lewis Hamilton by just 0.012 of a second, setting a 1 minute 17.207. Lando pointed out himself that he's feeling really good in the car. We've not heard him say that too many times this season. Also mentioning the upgrades. Of course, McLaren does have an upgrade package for this weekend, and even mentioned himself that he decided to push more on his second lap in Q3. And what was really fascinating about Q3 at the Hungarian is, as we quite often see there, not many drivers improved on their final lap at the end of qualifying. Lando being really the only exception to find significant lap time. Lewis Hamilton was 1.6 seconds slower on his second lap. Lewis had sat on provisional pole. The big question with Lewis, though, is will he even start from the front row? At the time of recording this, it is 1 a.m. in Tokyo, which, if I do some maths, is 5 p.m. I think in Hungary. Lewis Hamilton, though, is under investigation at the moment for impeding Oscar Piastri at the end of qualifying. Lewis had just finished his final lap in Q3 and obviously had slowed down considerably, whereas Oscar behind him had just started his final lap, and approaching the first corner, Lewis did not move off the racing line, and obviously as Oscar approached the first corner next to it, was really impeded by Lewis, went alongside him, gave him a sarcastic thumbs up, and yeah, not a very happy bunny. Lewis himself looked really concerned, speaking in Parc Fermé after qualifying, of course, when David Coulthard was speaking to the top three, was really short with his answers, pointing out that he was busy thinking and trying to replay the incident in his head to figure out if he thinks he will get penalised, if he won't. I could be wrong here. It does look pretty slam dunk for Lewis, who, had he claimed pole, it would have been his 10th at the Hungarian. No driver has ever claimed 10 poles at one circuit. This could have been a piece of F1 history. Instead, if Lewis is penalised, the big question is going to be, is it a 3-place grid penalty or is it a 5? If it's a 3, he'll start from 5th, and while overtaking is difficult at Hungary, you feel that with Ferrari's pace this weekend, that's still possible for at least a podium, maybe a late challenge for the race win. If it's a 5-place penalty, Lewis will start from 7th. And at that point, you've got to think, as Lewis said himself, it's then damage limitation. That's too many places in my eyes for him to make up at Hungary. 7th to 1st does sound like too much. So Lewis, despite having arguably the best pace, I think, this weekend, might not get a chance to truly show what it can do on Sunday. I guess the positive for Ferrari is that even if Lewis is penalised, it will still have a car on the front row. Charles Leclerc provisionally qualified in 3rd. Of course, if Lewis is penalised, it means he will be promoted to 2nd. And as we saw just last weekend at Spa, Charles has seemed to have turned a corner recently, and I would not rule him out of the victory at all. Of course, we know that Hungary, while overtaking, is very difficult. It's a long run to the first corner being the best and one of the only overtaking places at the Hungarian. So I think Lando Norris versus Charles Leclerc could very well be what we get on Sunday. For Lewis, you feel it's all going to depend on just how good a start he gets, and as I've mentioned already, how heavy a penalty it turns out to be. Kimi Antonelli, the championship leader, is also, at the timing of doing this video, under investigation for allegedly failing to slow under yellow flags. Max Verstappen spun at the end of Q3 at the final corner as Kimi was going through that section. It does look like Kimi, in my opinion again, might just get away with it. It does seem, if you look at the onboards, he lifted. Of course, it's quite a similar situation to what we saw back in Austria where George Russell went through yellow flags. Of course, it was Max Verstappen again who went off on that occasion. George was deemed by the stewards to have lifted sufficiently and kept pole position. Kimi, in this case, provisionally claimed fourth on the grid. Of course, if Lewis is penalised, gets promoted to third. But if Kimi's penalised, that could see him drop to, who knows, seventh, potentially even ninth, again, depending if it is a 3 or a 5 place. So something to keep an eye on, of course. Keep an eye on racingnews365.com because we'll bring you the news on Lewis and Kimi as soon as we get it. Oscar Piastri provisionally qualified in fifth, but as I mentioned, his last lap completely ruined by Lewis Hamilton. So I think the big surprise there will be if Lewis is not penalised. It was a disastrous session for George Russell. He's qualified provisionally in seventh. Another driver to have an issue in Q3 came to a stop at the end of the session with a water leak. Mercedes really looking all at sea this weekend. I think the weakest they've been this season at any point. Kimi Antonelli bemoaning to Bono about really struggling with the tyres, having no grip. The only team that seems to be having more issues of the big four is Red Bull. Despite the fact it's a new regulatory era, Red Bull, as they did last year, just not liking the Hungarian. Max Verstappen, as I mentioned, spun at the final corner, just trying to give it everything he can to get a few extra attempts out of the RB22. He's provisionally sixth on the grid, Isaac Hadjar in eighth, but since first practice, Max in particular has really not been happy, complaining of the gear shifts, the balance, the fact the car was bouncing. He was especially punchy to the Dutch broadcaster of Formula One, Viaplay, after qualifying. I'll just go through very quickly what Max was saying. Max was saying that there's something going wrong with the aerodynamics. Again, losing downforce. The car is just completely uncontrollable. You just turn in and the car breaks out completely. Just impossible to control. That sounds like a driver pretty fed up with the weekend, and I think looking forward to getting out of Hungary and into the summer break. Of course, we know that Max is still yet to make his mind up on his future, whether he's going to stay with Red Bull in 2027, whether he's going to join another team, whether he's even going to retire. But it's safe to say that this weekend is one that's probably not going to be helping him make his mind up on his future. The question from Max will be, can he make any progress in the race? If it's like last year, Hungary last year became a bit of a mission for survival for Red Bull and Max. The question will be if he can do better than that this year. And if there are penalties around him for Kimi, for Lewis, could he maybe stay ahead of a Mercedes or a Ferrari and score some points? Because obviously we have no idea yet how many rounds there's going to be in the season. So if there is to be a late title charge, I think very unlikely. The same for Lando Norris. I feel for Lando, this could be a real nothing to lose opportunity. If he gets to win, that's brilliant. He's still quite far adrift. If he doesn't win, nothing's really lost. To quickly go through the rest of the top 10, or the entirety of the top 10, it is Norris on pole, Hamilton second, Leclerc third, again all provisional, Antonelli fourth, Piastri fifth, Verstappen in sixth, Russell seventh, Hadjar in eighth, Arvid Lindblad ninth, and Nico Hulkenberg not an 11th, but 10th. Also a special shout out to Fernando Alonso. Aston Martin, of course, have the biggest upgrade package of the season so far, 16 new components on the AMR 26. And Fernando did what you'd expect from Fernando, got everything out of the car to make it to Q2, qualified in 6th. So well done, Fernando. P16, very well deserved. And I think that rounds up qualifying. So quickly looking ahead to the race and my predictions, I think, as I've mentioned, this is all going to be about if Lewis gets penalised, and I think he will, how big a grid drop is it going to be? 3 places, and don't count him out. 5 places, and I think that is just 2 extra places to make up too many. For me, if that happens, it's Lando versus Charles Leclerc. But if Kimi isn't penalised, the championship leader, nothing to lose. Well, I say actually he's got a lot to lose, so ignore that part. But Kimi, for me, you can't count him out. There's so many similarities between him and Max Verstappen. Max, again, he could be having the worst day in the world, but you still just can't forget about him, and no matter of what part of your mind. And Kimi's kind of showing the same personality a little bit, despite his issues this weekend, particularly with tyre grip. You can't count him out. So for me, though, I think Lando Norris might just do this and get McLaren's first win of the season. Let me know in the comments below what you made of qualifying, who you think is going to win tomorrow. And please do let me know what you thought of this style of F1 update, where it's just me and no friends. Please be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back on my own on Sunday after the race. See you later.